Hey Ed, this is my capstone research demo video. I put the details on the uh, more technical stuff that I learned on Swift, like basically learning different skill sets in Swift, learning how to create new classes, how to essentially all the programming techniques I had in the research. What I'll show on here is the games the games and the apps that I made so far. So what I did was work through a book called iOS Apprentice, and what it is just a book to learn how to teach you how to use Swift, which was a really nice book. It goes over very deep detail on how Swift works, and even better, it actually helps you build a project, and that's what I did. There's 4 books. I've gone through the first 2 so far. The first book makes you create a game called Bullseye, here's a picture of it, which I'll just show in a second, which I'll show the first game. All these projects are on Perforce, and you can run them on your Mac side. So let's see, make sure I can run it. So this was a very basic game just to get you introduced to Swift. It helped you design a storyboard, which is kind of the going between screens. Essentially, you see here, this is a storyboard. It just shows, essentially you design how you transition from screen to screen using essentially screens and then arrows on how they transition. And then you hook up the links in code in Swift, or essentially like the view controller, as you see here. But the game itself, I'll show that where do you go? There you go. But the game here is that you essentially move the slider back and forth, so you get used to creating different types of button controllers. And here you try to guess the value up here, try to slide this to be as close as possible. And you get points when you get it pretty close. Oh, that's actually the first time I actually got it perfect. Nice. All right, so that's the first basic game, which was a really good one. Was a nice introduction one. The next one that book 2 had you work on a checklist app, which was a lot harder. It went into some deeper Swift framework. Like, for example, the biggest one that was hardest for me to learn is the messaging system between Swift. Is that it's almost kind of like TCP protocols, internet protocols. And the idea is that you kind of message from different controllers. They kind of ping each other back and forth when you want to send messages. You can look in the PDF to dig further, but it was an interesting thing, and it was just the idea of setting up a data table. So one controller brings in the data and the other one displays it, and how do you pass the information back and forth. So, for example, the cool picture that helped me explain it, if I can, here we go. Scroll down. So essentially this right here is how it works, is that between different controllers, essentially in this one, the view controller and the table view controller, you pass messages back and forth. So it's kind of like they're pre-built-in functions that you have to answer the questions when you want one controller to talk back and forth between another. Very cool stuff. It was weird at first. I'd never seen that style before. Anyway, but here's the checklist app. And essentially it just lets you build your own notepad. So notepad, add, build an icon, drinks, that's it. There you go. So you build that. You can then, once in that, you can put a checklist with this. So you build a checklist, essentially a category, and then you build checklists again here. Meet at pub. There you go. And then you can click them on off if you completed them or not. So it's a nice little app. So that was the second part, second book. There's still a couple pieces I want to go back and finish. I got for the most things of this working. Book 2 and Book 3. Book 3 lets you helps you build a essentially a GPS app that allows you to piggyback off of your GPS, built-in GPS inside your iPhone. So I haven't gone through that. That's a cool one. And the final one, you actually build a kind of a wrapper on top of the iTunes store, so you can search iTunes by, and it just teaches you how to communicate between other apps, essentially pinging iTunes for information and then reading it in. Actually, that's even more. It's pinging an internet service to ring it in, that's book 3 and 4. I finished book 1 and 2, plan to finish the other 2 over the summer, and here's the other one, which is another book that they had was an iOS game book, which teaches you how to use Swift and their XNA equivalent, which they'll be explaining to you, which is called SpriteKit. It feels very much like XNA, but you actually kind of like treat it as a scenes. There's a bunch of commands that you pass in a bunch of information in sets, so like I'll open it for you. So game scene, for example, how the sprite kits work is that you kind of just actually write how the scene works. It's really weird to explain until you actually play around with it. So for example here, you give it an action, like you grab like what sprite kit action are you going to do? Well, we're going to scale it. I'm going to make it wiggle this direction, do this, and put this whole list together in a group, and then you run that group and all those requested actions. So it's a little bit different first, but it's a nice one. I think this would be a good thing to introduce for an iPhone class, this SpriteKit. However, for our research, eventually we'll replace SpriteKit with RAzul, which is what I want to do. But first we have to decide whether we're going to use OpenGL or Metal. But here's the game so far. It's not finished yet, but at least it's enough to play around with. The assets came with the book. So here, these are all the assets that came with the book, including the music. Turn it down a little. So the object of the game is to collect cats, avoid grandma. The more cats you get, the bigger the Congo line gets. But it was a nice small game. There's 2 other games that you also build in this book as well. A platformer and a shooter. But you're welcome to play both of them. And essentially all these were just these were just nice books to get me familiar with Swift, the iOS framework, SpriteKit, and then the other thing I was just recently reading into, which is Metal, which I'll have to talk to you about at some point. But you're welcome to delve around this. We can talk about this later, but at least here's a quick video for you to watch and show what I've been working on. I wish I had gotten farther along in it, but I mean, this quarter got pretty busy with teaching. But I got through, again, a good portion of the book series. So thank you, and I guess that would be the end of the video. All right, I'll talk to you later, Ed.